management. Today, our conversation is about compliance management. And once again, everybody will be wondering what exactly is compliance management? Why are we even talking about compliance management? What is the importance of compliance management? So this is the standard. I hope everybody can see my screen. Everyone, I hope you can see my screen. Right? I hope you can see my screen. Can anybody, Maureen, can you confirm you can see my screen?
Yes, we can see this. Yes.
All right, brilliant. So as I said, a lot of people don't even know that there's something called the compliance management system. So, and this is something that I think any organization that does that has any form of regulator should worry about compliance management. Any organization that has any form of regulator should worry about compliance management. Right? It doesn't matter what the organization does, you should worry about compliance management. And compliance is a big deal. So every pension company in the country needs to worry about compliance management. Every bank needs to worry about compliance management. And it doesn't matter whether you're a mortgage bank or you're a commercial bank or you're a microfinance bank, in as much as you're called a bank of any sort, you should worry about compliance management. I think every insurance, every pension, every telecommunications provider, all the people that are licensed by NCC, they should worry about compliance management. Everybody that does anything with NAFDAC, they should worry about compliance management. Every oil and gas company should worry about compliance management. So this compliance is not a small thing, it's a big deal. It's a big deal. And once again, it's a concern that all organizations globally, whether you're in Ghana, you're in West Africa, wherever it is that you are, it's something that all organizations should worry about. So I'm happy that you all are here and we can learn about compliance management over the next couple of minutes. This is my humble self. I've done this particular thing for this line of work for quite a bit, and indeed, it's my pleasure to be here. I think this version of my picture is already looking younger than I am. I think this was taken maybe last year or something like that. I think I've grown slightly older, so to speak, in comparison. I don't look into the mirror regularly, so I can't really tell what my face looks like. Well, I'm looking at this person, he looks like a young guy. I think when I think about my my age and experience, I don't think I look this young. Maybe more Maureen or any other person will tell me after the call whether I still look as young as this. But yeah, that is me, and this is my line of work, and I work with a lot of organizations globally, so to speak. So IFO is an audit company. That's what we do. We provide audit and assurance. Primarily, that is what we do. We audit. I used to do a lot of core implementation in my earlier years, but in the last 6-7 years, in the last 5-6 years, I think I spent the first 15-16 years of my career just doing implementation of one thing or the other, especially when it comes to software and process improvement and those kinds of things. But in the last 5 years, I've just focused a lot of my effort on auditing for various organizations. So before I started auditing, I put in at least 16, 17 years of core implementation work for different organizations. So yeah, that's who we are as an organization. We're an audit company. We audit standards. We audit anything. We audit human beings. We audit processes. We audit departments. We audit systems. We audit standards. We audit any and everything. So that's who we are. So in we've tried to condense and summarize the whole standard onto one page. So this is like the entire standard in itself. And for the people who are on the call, who are kind of familiar with standards, this is it. This is it. For the people who are familiar with standards, so understanding the organization and its context, the needs and expectations of interested parties, scope, and then the system. But in this particular standard, we also have they put something for 4.5 and 4.6 that talks about an organization clearly understanding their compliance obligations. An organization clearly understanding their compliance obligations. So it's like you really understanding what exactly are all the things you're meant to comply to as an organization. And some people take a very siloed view of this whole thing. Some people look at it properly, some people don't look at it properly. Some people think that compliance is only to legal. Some people think that compliance is only to regulatory. Some people think that compliance is only to the statutory, whatever those things are. But compliance is a big deal. You even have to comply to your own internal policies and procedures. So compliance is a big deal. And as I said earlier, doesn't matter whether you're a bank, an insurance company, your microfinance, your telecommunications, you're an electricity company, compliance is your work. You have to worry about compliance. Compliance even to your tax payments, compliance to pensions, compliance to different areas of work. So that is included here. That 4.5 is not in any other standard apart from this one. So it's a requirement of the standard that you clearly understand your compliance obligations, and apart from understanding it, is to also understand your risk assessment, is to also understand your risks. What are the risks that your organization, the risks that your organization might not meet its compliance obligations? Because that's what that 4.6 is talking about. It's not, it's on one hand, you look at it and say, oh, what exactly our compliance organization, what are the risks? What are the threats in us not meeting them? On one hand, what are the opportunities that exist for us by meeting them? So that 4.5 and 4.6 is a big deal. 4.5 and 4.6 is a big deal. Once again, if any organization understands this appropriately, they should be able to do magic. If any organization understands this, they should be able to do magic as it is. So don't mess around with this whole compliance thing. So once again, we're going to talk about leadership and their commitment. For people who know ISO standards, they're also familiar with that. And also compliance, the policy. Every organization should have some kind of overall compliance policy, and they have to have the right people driving compliance. Once again, it's not only for, so there's a relationship between 4.6 and 6.1. There's a clear relationship between 4.6 and 6.1. So 6.1 is a action for you to address the risks and opportunities. So if you've done it at 4.6, it will suffice for 6.1 and thereabout. And then, of course, for 6.2, talks about objectives and the plans to achieve them and changes. The whole of 7 is the same thing as it is in every ISO standard. You know, the resources that you need, whether it is software, whether it is people, whatever it is that are the resources that you need to ensure that you get compliance right. And then, of course, competence of people. Do you have people who truly understand the compliance landscape for your organization and in your country, right? So, I mean, for some banks that have people in different parts of the world, the compliance landscape, I mean, some of the banks in Africa, they're in 20 countries, they're in 15 countries. That is it. So if somebody has a job that says that I'm the group compliance officer, that is a complex landscape, because you have to understand the compliance requirements in each of the countries where you operate. And that's why I enjoy organizations to start to implement a compliance management software. I think that's very important. And you need people that are trained. You need to ensure that the entire organization understands their own, what parts they need to play relative to compliance, communication, and documented information. If we move to clause 8, of course, you have to have plans and how you control those plans with regards to compliance. There's got to be some clear controls and procedures in place. It's got to be some clear controls and procedures in place relative to compliance. And then if there are concerns, if staff of the organization, both internal and external stakeholders have concerns with regards to the organization's ability or the organization just meeting its compliance responsibilities. If there are concerns like that, then there've got to be appropriate channels by which those things can come up. So that means there's a relationship between 4.2 and 8.3 here. Because if there are concerns that the way we work, the way we do things, some of our plans, some of our locations, some of our businesses, some of our this, some of our that, if there are concerns around those things, then of course, people need to be able to raise those concerns through verified channels, through valid and verified channels. And of course, for 8.4 is really about investigation into areas whereby we might not be complying already, or we might have complied in the past, but we might be struggling to comply in the future. Okay, so it's a big deal. It's a big deal. The whole of 9 is like every other ISO standard. How do we measure compliance? Internal audit with regards to compliance, because people don't understand, a lot of internal auditors don't understand that they even need to audit their compliance. And then, of course, executive review, management review relative to compliance, and in clause 10, continual improvement and non-conformity. So this is pretty much the standard, but like every other standard, and I was having a meeting with some of my colleagues earlier today, the standard does not say everything. That means you might need to also take some things into consideration that might not be written directly within the standard. So somebody cannot say, I was speaking to some of my colleagues earlier today that says that, oh, you know what, you need to onboard your agents and your merchants appropriately. But the standard for information security 27001 might not necessarily say that. So there might be a concern around you having a database access monitoring platform, but the standard might not necessarily state that. So most people don't understand that standards are minimum requirements. In reality, standards, they are, I mean, ISO standards specifically in this instance, they are just minimum requirements. So an organization can put this in place and even put more in place. And when it comes to the second half of this, my presentation, I'm going to talk about some key things, at least in the entire industry, that people worry about when it comes to standards. So I'm going to talk about some of those things in the second half of this whole thing. So, but let me move on very quickly. So this is the overall, this is the summary of some sort with regards to this, and I'll just quickly move on with regards to all the other things. So once again, let me not overflow the conversation around compliance, the importance of compliance, why every organization, electricity company have companies, they have a lot of compliance responsibilities. Oil and gas companies have a lot of compliance responsibilities. Let's not talk about banks and fintechs. So compliance is for everybody, every proper organization. I was sharing with them once again recently that I used to run an organization, and we failed with regards to our tax compliance. And just because of our tax compliance, we literally had to close the company down, just because of our tax compliance. So tax as a form, tax payments, paying the right amount at the right time as a form of compliance was the basis for which we closed an organization that was doing 500 million, 600 million naira on an annual basis. We had to close the company down. That was an organization that was going to hit $1 billion. We were already on 500, we were already on 600, but we didn't take some key things like pensions, like tax, and some of those things. We looked at compliance as a secondary or tertiary problem. And because we looked at compliance as a secondary and tertiary problem, that compliance that we ignored made us close the company down. So it's important that organizations get compliance, that they get it right. It's not a joke. It's not something to play with. It's not something to ignore. If you ignore it, you ignore compliance at your own peril and detriment as an organization. Okay, I will share the slides thereafter. Once again, I don't want to spend all my time reading the slides to you, and the benefits are endless. There are so many benefits from ensuring that you do your compliance appropriately. There are so many benefits from doing it. One, it guarantees that you still have a business, that you're still in business. It also makes sure that, you know, in a lot of places, that's why you see that in some organizations, a lot of people cannot bid for work. And the reason why they cannot bid for work is because of compliance. The compliance is done poorly, is done badly. So when they go to the banks, and the banks have a long list of the things they must comply with, despite them being in a position to be able to provide the service, but just because of compliance, they can't bid for those things. And that's why you see for a lot of federal government institutions or federal government jobs, you will see a long list of things. Oh, you must have your NDPR, you must have something with CAC, you must have your NITDA, you must have this. If you're providing software, you must be a member of computer professionals, you must, I mean, it's a long list of things, especially when it comes to government. And once again, the reason why a lot of people cannot bid for a lot of these government things is just because of compliance. It is just because of compliance. So if you ignore compliance at the detriment of your own organization, at the detriment of your own growth. And at some point in time, you won't be able to run that business any longer. And the compliance is not window dressing, because the whole world looks at compliance as just window dressing for the regulator, especially entities that are regulated. They think, just put something together so that the people will see something. But, you can't really do compliance just for that. You have to get value from your compliance activity. So there's so many, there's so much value that you can get if you get compliance right. In fact, there was a document I'd written a while ago, compliance as a competitive advantage. There's a document I wrote a while ago, some years ago, 4 years ago, thereabout. I'm sure I can still, if I look for it, I'll be able to find it, where I said compliance as a competitive advantage. Compliance as some form of competitive advantage, and that's very important as it is. Because this is an ISO standard, of course, the same Plan, Do, Check, Act is very applicable. Plan your improvement, do the things you've said you plan. The do is the execution portion of things, and then the check is the audit side of things. The internal audit side of things is what we talk about when we talk about check. And then you need to keep improving. Nobody has a perfect compliance system, not even HSBC, not even Citibank. Each of those entities are still trying to get better relative to compliance. So, and I'm hoping that after this call, all of you that are here, you will become compliance champions, that you'll be able to speak intelligently about the concept of compliance and why organizations need to take it very seriously, and how they need to ensure that they're not just complying in form, but they're also complying in essence. The form of something versus its essence. That the compliance is not just compliance for compliance sake, it is compliance to help the organization stabilize and to help ensure that the organization is sustainable into the future. So compliance is a big deal once again. And then the concept of regulations, So regulation is a big deal. So some people, I mean, you have all sorts of regulation. So you have regulation from the federal government of the country where you're operating. So there's regulation in the country where you're operating. There's regulation if you're a regulated entity. You cannot get oil and gas license because there's a federal government institution that regulates that. You cannot be an ISP. You cannot be an insurance company. You cannot be a fintech. You cannot be a bank. You cannot even be an electricity company. So all those areas, you cannot be a manufacturing company. So you have to worry about both the national regulation, the local regulations, community. I mean, some local governments have certain regulations, and then you have to worry about all your regulators. So once again, this is a big deal when we talk about compliance. It's a big deal as it is, and organizations need to take that into consideration. And you can apply different guidelines to it. You can apply different guidelines to the work that you're doing relative to compliance. I mean, there's a concept of the compliance culture. That compliance should not be a pain. It should not be painful. Compliance should not be painful. It should be something that you build and integrated into the organization. Compliance should be part of your day job. It should be part of your life as an organization. Compliance will not be an inconvenience. Compliance will not be something that you'll be getting annoyed. Why are they coming to ask us for this again? Because you need to comply. And the compliance, once again, I tell a lot of my clients, I said, this compliance is not punitive. The compliance is not to punish you. It is not punitive. It's not a punishment. Compliance is not there that, oh, you know what, we're going to punish you with our compliance requirement. It is so that, the environment, God forbid that banks start to fail or insurance companies start to fail and the monies that people have put into those entities, they can't get the monies back, neither are they able to get any kind of return on their investment. So this is a conversation to have with every compliance department in every organization. This is the conversation to have. All right. So once again, there is a concept of internal control within compliance. Okay. So there's the internal control framework within compliance in itself. And this is essential that you look at what is because there are so many things that overlap. In an organization, you have risk department. In some organizations, you have compliance, you have internal control, you have audits. 4 different departments. And it looks as if there are overlaps between the work that each of these departments that they do. That's why it seems there are overlaps with the work that each of these departments that they do. All right. So, but indeed, if they structure it properly, if they plan it properly, and if they design and architect it properly, there are no real overlaps. The job of compliance is different from the job of internal control in reality. Because some organizations, of course, combine these things, especially in this modern day where we have something called a GRC, governance, risk, and compliance. So in some organizations, they combine these things, but in some organizations, these things are not combined. But compliance is a big deal. And of course, as part of your compliance, you also have to think about who your stakeholders are. Who are my stakeholders? How do I need to manage them? Who are the stakeholders that I need to demonstrate compliance to? Compliance is also very internal. People don't take, once again, people don't take that into consideration. Compliance is very internal. Also, there are policies and procedures that you need to comply to. If you have a board meeting as part of your corporate governance, or your compliance landscape is a big deal. So you please do not muck around with that. Also, when it comes to your contract, because your contracts are things that you're bound by. You're bound by the various contracts that you have. Contracts with different organizations, procurement contracts, supply contracts, delivery contracts, all sorts of contracts that you have. You're bound. Service provider companies, you're bound. IT provider companies, you're bound. You have a work order from the client. You're bound. So that's why the way you manage your products, manage your processes, and manage your projects have to be key. Okay, so the dictates and the content of compliance, you're bound by them, and that's why you see in some organizations, it is the legal guys who drive compliance, because there's a legal side to being compliant. There's a legal side to compliance. The failure in compliance can lead to some legal liabilities. And that's a key consideration, once again, when it comes to compliance. In modern day, IT is also very important when it comes to compliance. How we manage the data that is in our custody. And that is why this entire data protection and privacy is critical in this modern day. That's why organizations are looking for people to do some kind of privacy review for them. Privacy maturity. How are we handling customer data? How are we handling staff data? How are we handling supplier data? How are we handling the data that is within our custody in this modern day of fraud? That fraud is a big deal everywhere. How are we handling these things? Okay, so data privacy, these things are key things that you and I in modern day, we need to know about, we need to think about, and we need to take into keen consideration. All right, so once again, especially for oil and gas companies that have physical data centers, IT service providers that have physical data centers, any organization, all of us have generators, and how we're doing our CO2 emission into the environment. So are we complying? There is the Ministry of Environment in Nigeria. There's something that every organization, every enterprise organization is meant to be doing, which has got to do with their CO2 emission. Are we complying to what it is that the Ministry of Environment that they've said with regards to how we do our gas emission within our organizations? Most people don't even know that there are regulations within the country that address these things. So these are key things. So especially for people in manufacturing, one of my friends, Dapo, is a big health and safety professional. And he's always talking about the number of people who die in cement companies, in manufacturing companies. One time I went to, about 2-3 months ago, I went to the hospital. There was a guy who was working for a construction company. Literally, his hand had just been cut off, like from his elbow down. It just been cut off, and it was doing some dangerous piece of work without the right safety equipment. His hand from his elbow to his wrist had been cut off. Everybody was just screaming in the hospital when they brought him in. The guys were saying that, you know, the kind of surgery, like, because the thing was just dangling, so they were holding it inside of wood and bandage and all sorts of things. Because there are compliance things with regard to health and safety, and people are not taking these things into keen consideration. So people are dying just because compliance is failing. So once again, this is a big deal. I don't want to spend all my time on the 4 to 10. I hope most people that are on this call that you kind of know about ISO standards, whether it's 9001, whether it's 27001 for information security, whatever that standard is. I'm hoping you know something about ISO standards. So because for ISO standards, it says that, you know, if you're going to adopt and implement it, you have to adopt it so that it fits your own organization. So you don't do a generic adoption, you do your own company specific adoption, and that the needs and the expectations of your own interested parties, otherwise called stakeholders, are taken into keen consideration. That you determine the scope of compliance, that you determine that scope appropriately and adequately. Does it cover all your subsidiaries? Does it cover all your branches? Does it cover all your business operations? And then, of course, that you have what can be referred to as a proper compliance management system, taking into consideration the interaction of processes. What are all the things that need to come together if you're going to have a proper compliance management system as an organization? I've spoken to you about your obligations. Some people call the obligations, they'll say like your compliance universe, something along those lines, and the risks and the opportunities, both the threats and the opportunities around you not achieving your compliance obligations. So this is a big deal. Further to that, leadership of an organization all the way from the board. Compliance is a corporate governance issue. Compliance is a corporate governance issue. So your board, they need to be in there. You have to have a great policy. Roles and responsibilities need to be assigned to the right people relative to compliance. Roles and responsibilities need to be assigned to the right people within the organization relative to compliance. Once again, your risk and opportunities and how you plan the objectives for compliance management. What are the objectives and the plans that will help ensure that these objectives are achieved? It's not good enough to have objectives. You must also have clear plans to achieve them. It's not good enough. You must have clear plans to achieve them. You need resources, you need competent people, you need people who work in compliance management to attend a course like this, to attend a webinar like this, so that even if they knew about compliance before, they can know more about compliance. That's the idea, so to speak, because competence is key. Without competence, you can't get anything done, right? Awareness, it's important that everybody is aware of what it is that you're doing. All the staff of the organization, they understand how they contribute to this your compliance landscape. That all the staff of the organization and all the interested parties, they are aware of their own contribution to this. Communication is also essential. that you keep reminding people of the roles, responsibilities of the core essence of compliance, and of course that you maintain all the right information, that you maintain all the right documents with regards to this. Okay, somebody is complaining to me that they are not able to join. Okay, yeah. Okay, good. So that's that. And of course, the operation of compliance. How does compliance operate in your own organization? The operation of compliance, the controls and the procedures around compliance, how your stakeholders, internal and external, need to be able to formally raise concerns that the way our machines are set up, we're going to violate this. If we buy that particular land, we're going to violate this. If we use this kind of tractor, we're going to violate this. But people cannot raise concerns except they are aware, and that's why you can see that there is a relationship between different elements of the standard. The people who are meant to raise concerns, they must already be aware of what we're even meant to be complying to, so that they can help. And here also talks about how we investigate instances, situations, and circumstances whereby we have either not complied in the past, or we might not be able to comply in the future. That is what this is about. Performance evaluation, once again, the idea here is that, we have measurements and KPIs with regards to performance, and then we get our internal auditors involved so that they're auditing our compliance capabilities and our compliance posture as an organization. We get internal audit involved, and of course, we also get executives involved with the management review. We get executives involved with the management review, the right management review at the right time. And finally, it's here, this is meant to be improvement, sorry, not evaluation. This is meant to be improvement, right? So whereby we will be looking at continually improving what we have put in place. Compliance can keep getting better. Some organizations have been managing compliance for 50 years and they're still getting better at it. So I like this diagram. I will actually share the link in the chat room. Let me share the link so that everybody can go there, especially for people who might not be able to see it clearly. So I'll just go into the chat room. Where's my chat? Everybody, so I put this link in the chat room. All right, I'll put the link in the chat room so that people can click on the link. It's a big page. I just took a screenshot of it, and that's how I have it here. It's a massive page, right? And it talks about many, many things, especially the things towards the right. There's a list of things towards the right that companies who are thinking about their compliance universe. This is what a compliance universe looks like. It's a brilliant thing. It's used in South Africa by some organization, but they put it out there. I've known about this for a very long time, and I think it's brilliant. When on your computer, you can expand it, you can open it properly, you can look at it and say, what exactly is this saying? Well, it's got many things, and it opens your eyes really to the vast to the broad and the vast landscape of everything that you should do and worry about from a compliance perspective. And you can interpret a lot of these things for your own organization. You can interpret a lot of these things for your own organization. In your own organization, you can interpret a lot of these things for you. So go and look at it. It will be useful for you to try and say that what is the equivalent of these requirements for my own organization in my own country? What is the equivalent of these things for my own organization and in my own country? How do I build my own compliance universe as an organization? How do I build my own compliance universe as an organization? So I know in Nigeria, I mean, actually not just in Nigeria, in most parts of Africa, the interpretation, especially in banking, everything that they think about compliance comes down to AML. anti-money laundering. For a lot of entities, anti-money laundering is like the most important thing, AML, CFT. All right? Everything around terrorism financing. That's what most organizations think about. Either something that's coming directly from their regulator or they think about those things. And in your own country, whether it's in Ghana and Nigeria, you can type BOG AML guideline. If you're in Nigeria, you can type CBN AML guideline. So you can type the Security Exchange Commission guideline. There are all sorts of things with regards to AML and CFT. And for most people, in fact, for 90% of the people, everything that they think about when it comes to compliance is AML and CFT. But everything is not about AML and CFT, right? It's very important. And that's why I've taken the next couple of slides just to really talk about anti-money laundering and combating terrorism financing. But that's not all. It's just one portion of compliance. In fact, most compliance exams globally, that's the focus of the exam. The exam is about AML and CFT, but that's not all. Now, but that is good that you all are experts in anti-money laundering. First time I came across something like this was about 15, 16 years ago. Or did something with something called the Finance and Intelligence Finance and Intelligence, Financial Intelligence Unit, NFIE. So when they were looking for the organization I was with, then that we should build something called the suspicious transaction database. So they wanted to connect to all the banks and all that, but at least that has been done years after. So these are all concepts that are very important. So for example, there is a global sanction list. There is a national sanction list. Organizations that are sanctioned, people that are sanctioned, entities that are sanctioned, lines of work that are sanctioned, countries that are sanctioned, cryptographic algorithms that are sanctioned. So everybody really needs to think about the sanction list, because you need to bring the sanction list into your work. You need to bring the sanction list into your work, into your compliance work, so that you don't go to buy products that you should not buy. You don't deal with entities that you should not deal with. You don't deal with people that you should not deal with. That's why in most countries, when somebody is going to become like a GM in a bank, you have to send their CV and all that stuff to the regulator. If somebody is going to be on your board, you have to send their CV and all their details to the regulator so that they can check in the sanction list whether those people you're allowed to hire them. You cannot wake up now and say you want to go and do business in Lebanon. There will be some sanction list in some areas. So everybody that is thinking about the compliance management system has to really think about what is the sanction list. Sanction list for individuals, sanction list for companies, for countries, for systems. That's why in the US, if you want to take something like Huawei, the people believe that the Huawei people are using their system to eavesdrop on them. So they will say, oh, we can buy this, but we won't buy it from Huawei. We'll only buy maybe Cisco. That's why some people will say, oh, you can give me a phone, but you can't go and install TikTok on the phone, because they believe that there is some back door within that system. That's why some government institutions will not use a certain kind of phone. So each of you that is thinking about being some kind of compliance expert, you really have to understand what a sanction list is about. This is another concept. Who benefits? So there's also the identification of who is going to benefit from a lot of crime and crime, whether it is direct crime, indirect crime, ultimate beneficial ownership. This is a concept for a lot of the people. And that's why organizations worry a lot, once again, about KYC. But KYC, I think KYC is just one portion. All right. All right. So what do we do with regards to who benefits? And this is where a lot of the transaction monitoring. I was speaking earlier last week an organization that just suffered from fraud. And now we're down doing the analysis. And I say, how did this happen? Is this something to do? And it was an internal fraud. So so your problem is not only KYC, know your customer. You have to know your merchant, know your agent, know your supplier, know your staff. In modern day, know your staff is even more important than know your customer. Because so one of the loopholes in organizations is that they've done staff due diligence, but they did it 5 years ago. The guy has changed his house, changed his phone number, changed everything, so that when he's going to perpetrate the fraud, what is in your system is no longer valid. So HR has to look at it and start to ask themselves, how often do we need to go back to keep reviewing the biodata? People have changed everything that you have in their biodata has literally changed. So even some of those references are no longer valid. So there's something that organizations need to really, this is something that organizations really need to think about. But there is a big concept that who owns or controls the entity who is going to ultimate beneficial ownership. All right. So if that thing goes wrong, and that's why identification of boards and executives of organizations is very important. I know of a bank, if they don't know your MD, they don't know all those people, and those people are not credible people, they are not even they won't even work with you. Just like you want to take a loan, people need to understand that, if the tree falls, where is it going to fall on, and can we hold the person? Yeah, they don't say the person has disappeared or relocated. So this is another big concept when it comes to anti-money laundering type conversations. As I said, know your customer is key, but that's not all. You need to know your merchants, you need to know your agents, you need to know your suppliers, you need to know your third parties. You need to, because if something goes wrong, I mean, if you go and look into the PCI documentation, if something goes wrong, you will still be liable as an entity. So it's not just about knowing your customer, it's also knowing all your stakeholders, so that you understand your exposure to each of these entities as it is. This is another thing. So when I was speaking with somebody, I said, for somebody to take money out of your organization, how did this happen? Is there nothing that is monitoring the database? Is there nothing that is monitoring all the transactions? And that's why people need to think about their APIs. There is no organization that does not have an API risk. Something is threatening your API, either internal or external. Everybody needs to go and look at how their APIs are provisioned and how they are consumed. It's a big conversation. The screening of your transactions and how payments are being done. It's a big conversation. And there are all sorts of tools. The only tool an organization should be buying is not just the server or the virtual machine or the network. People are worried about availability. Most people, and that's why we had to bring in CISOs. Because I used to tell people 20 years ago, there was nobody called the CISO. What was that? Nobody was called the CISO. It was IT security. One guy who used to do PIX firewall and things like that was seated within the IT department. But because we wanted to put a lot of focus on confidentiality and integrity, that's why we now say, you know what, we need to have a CISO. Because IT people only normally think about availability. But now let the CISO now also keep his eyes clearly on confidentiality and integrity of data and information, so that we don't keep having fraud and all sorts of things. So you need to ask yourself, do I have a payment and transaction screening system? Do you have anything that does that has been built in such a way that it will flag certain transactions within the organization? Do I have something that helps me with suspicious transaction monitoring? It's a big deal. So you can't be a fintech and you're not thinking like this. You shouldn't be a bank and you're not thinking like this. And that's why you see some banks, if they go and look at, you go there and just say, oh, can I transfer 10 million naira? They will stop it within the system because they looked at your trend. You've never transferred more than 100,000. One day you now want to transfer 10 million. That's why the account officer will now start calling the phone number like, Oga, how are you, sir? How are you doing, sir? We just saw one transaction because it has been flagged. It's a suspicious transaction. based on your history and based on the trend. You will never get 1 million bucks in your account, then one day you have 100. The bank is going to call you. Their systems are built and should be built to be able to identify these things. So once again, everybody should think about your compliance. Your compliance is a big deal. Health and safety, internal IT, labor laws, the use of software. Every time we talk about compliance organization, I said, are you sure you're not violating one Microsoft or Oracle license? Of course, almost everybody is violating that. People buy licenses, but they use what people buy Windows 2019 and then they activate it once, but install it 10 times. Then they won't activate those ones. So each of you should go back and say, you as an organization, are we on top of compliance? Are we on top of compliance? Because most people are not on top of their compliance. Their labor laws and everything that is HR related, everything that is health and safety, everything that is tied to international. That's why you will see some of those organizations, they will bring people from outside of the country. Those people will not have the right papers and those kinds of things. And then they will go to arrest them and then they take them out, right? Once again, it's many things. Travel ban. One of my friends used to work for a telecommunications provider and he went to work in Iraq. And when he wanted to go to the US, he had to change his passport completely because people had told him, right? So, but when he still got to the US, the guys in the US still flagged it. They said that, you know what, when they looked at, I mean, they have the IATA information. And so they looked at it, they said, what were you doing in Iraq? He had to really prove to them. And then they were even asking for his old passport because his new passport did not have that. They had to prove to them that it was his company that sent him there. So he wanted to go to the US. He had changed his passport. He did still know that the people will still find out that he had gone to Iraq. And that's why all these cabotage laws and all these things on the high sea, because that's where the problem is. So you cannot be a company that is into freight and forwarding and all those kinds of things, and you'll be unaware of the things that relate to your industry, whether it's airline, whether it is something that is got to do with the seas, or your own sector, the country that you're in, and if you're doing international work. I remember one time I wanted to work for some UK organization that was like a subsidiary of the Navy. If you see the amount of screening that they had to do before you're allowed to even be put on the engagement, there was a lot. Even in Nigeria, you see now that, and in some of the African countries, you have to bring a police report for the consultants that are going to be on the work. They want to see a police report, a validated police report. So this whole thing is a big deal. You can't look at it. And the international organizations, there are so many international organizations you should worry about. This is just a fraction of the international organizations that exist. And all of them have one kind of, thing that they put out in there relative to finance, relative to compliance. So you have to understand, do you have any business with that entity? Do you know what that entity is about? What is their concern? And those kinds of things. Here, I've also put something around the compliance register. I've seen some people, they have a compliance register, but their compliance register does not have the adequate field. I designed this, and I still don't think it even has enough. I put this off, but I don't think it has enough. So your compliance register, is it an adequate compliance register? Does it cover everything in the compliance universe? Legal compliance, regulatory compliance, statutory compliance, contractual compliance, all sorts. IT compliance, internal compliance. So you all should go away knowing that your organization should have a decent compliance register. And this is what I consider to be the minimum that should be the number of fields in that compliance register. This is what I consider to be the minimum in that compliance register. I'll soon round up. Anti-money laundering is a big deal. It's a massive deal. And you can't call yourself a compliance officer, a compliance professional if you don't understand anti-money laundering, right? especially in financial services. This is the Lord of all in financial services. BOG, AML, that get AML everywhere, and the financing of terrorism. So it's a big deal. It's a big deal. And that's why you see in some organizations, they even have a software that they use for AML. Of course, a lot of the software is tied to their core banking and tied to some of those elements that allow them to be able to do this, because you can't really do anti-money laundering effectively manually. It doesn't work that way. You cannot look at all the transactions that are going through your portal. You have to build it into the software and build flags and alerts and triggers into your application in itself. Okay, so CFT is a big deal. Everywhere you see somebody talking about compliance, they're all, especially in financial services, they're always talking about AML and CFT, countering the finance of terrorism. But once again, those things, they look out, right? But you also have to look in. Fraud is big. Fraud and forensic analysis. Somebody has lost 40-something billion in Naira as a bank. That was not outside. That is not same. That is not somebody sitting in Malaysia. It's a staff of the organization. Actually, it's a staff of IT. It's an IT staff. So, you know, while there's a lot of focus on AML and CFT, countering financing of terrorism, it is more than these things. These things are important. They're essential. If you're going to be a CFT expert, you have to be able to trace where the money is. I used to do some work with Interpol, and one of my colleagues is on the call. We used to work on it together. This is the diagram, the kind of thing that, okay, where was the money coming from? And then people clean up money. If you've been watching, what's that 50 Cent movie series? They always talk about how they want to clean up the money. If you watch that Denzel when he was Godfather in one, what's the name of that his movie? They're talking about using car wash and laundry places to clean money. People do money from drugs, from all sorts of things, and then they're looking for how to clean it up. And that's why a lot of people are interested in fintech, because they can clean the money up via what they will call fintech transactions. They'll just be doing transactions. The transactions were never generated by the public. They were used to clean somebody's money. And that's why there's got to be a lot of focus on fintechs and where the origination and the consummation of fintech transactions. It's the same way people are using bureau de change and forex places to clean money. So if you're going to be doing terrorism and anti-money laundering, you have to understand the trajectory of those things. Where is it coming from? And you have to be able to draw like a data flow. You have to be able to trace the source of these things. So these are the kinds of things. Where was it placed? Where was it coming from? And then there will be layers and layers and layers. So if you can't become a certified fraud examiner, these are the kinds of things to worry about. So it's important that you understand this. I like this organization, Financial Action for Task Force. They have these 40 recommendations, and you'll find it online. You can download it. Clear 40 different things that is recommended that banks and financial institutions and people who are worried about AML and CFT should do. Okay, so if you check online, you'll find it there. The FATF 40 recommendations. So organizations should, and this is the most validated because it's very clean and clear. So this is one of the things organizations should be showing compliance to. Companies should be showing that they comply to these 40 recommendations. Okay? So it's a brilliant document. Go online, you'll find it. The FATF recommendation, we'll find it. And it is really useful for any organization who is really do AML, CFT type compliance. Okay? There are also some organizations who are in charge of doing this. So a lot of people subscribe to this hedge fund group because they are an organization that has all sorts of intelligence and reports. So a lot of banks are meant to be, and fintechs are meant to be subscribed to them and have a relationship with them because they keep a database and they are really driving how these things are being done and how they should be done properly. All right, United Nations is also, I mean, this is global, and that's why I have that list here of organizations who are all trying to drive and champion anti-money laundering and terrorism financing. Okay, so the United Nations has all sorts of guidelines around the money laundering process of crime and financing of terrorism, all sorts of things that organizations, fintechs, microfinance banks should be taking into consideration. Once again, each of your organizations needs to have a compliance framework. Each of your organizations need to have a compliance framework. You need to work with some kind of expert that can help you put together a compliance framework. And this is the policy, the plans, the register, the calendar of activities, and all that. Everybody on this call, and even to your clients, the recommendation is that they need to have a compliance framework. Because without this, then they are mucking around and playing around compliance. Okay. That of course there are all sorts of institutions in Nigeria and the equivalent. In Ghana, you have something called a so-called people who do all sorts of financial crime the type thing in Ghana. So the BOG also has theirs. The Security Exchange Commission of Ghana, they also have there. The entity in charge of insurance, the Financial Reporting Council, the police. So there's an equivalent of this in every country. In Kenya, there is an equivalent of this in every country. There is an equivalent of this in every country. Okay, so other key things that you might want to take into consideration for your compliance includes governance and ethics, customer due diligence, onboarding supplier, and to pull about agents and merchants, the frequency of your reporting, the politically exposed persons, trade-based money laundering, because that's what a lot of people are doing. Just like in modern day, when you tell somebody that, oh, they're doing fraud, every fraud guy is always trying to tell you that they're into importing cars and into real estate and then Bitcoin. So they have some kind of cover. All of them will tell you that I do Bitcoin. All of them will tell you that I do crypto. All of them will tell you that I'm into real estate. All of them are going to tell you that they bring cars in. They also are, all of them are also saying that they do farming because they need to, they're also thinking about how, you know, the front to put out. You know, the guy is doing farming and you're looking at him, you're like, this one, what do you even know about farming? And you look at the cost of his Jeep, you know, that, and look at his age. Is he, you know, the profile of this guy does not fit the profile of anybody that does any kind of farming. And once again, non-bank institutions should also worry about these things. Fintechs, merchants, bureau de change, forex exchanges, security companies. And that's why this compliance is not a small, or straightforward, or easy conversation. It's a big conversation. All right. Of course, casinos. Everybody knows that globally. People who do fraud, who do all these things, and you and I watch more than enough movies to see that, you know, casino business is big when it comes to laundering money. They try to clean up the money via casino. Various casinos globally. All right. So lastly is that all of you, I mean, you should have great dashboards that tell you about your compliance. You should have great dashboards that tell you about your compliance. All the organizations that are represented on the call, you should have great dashboards that tell you about your compliance. Compliance is not by mistake. You should be very particular and intentional with regards to the compliance of your own organization. Real-time reporting of your compliance status and compliance capabilities. Real-time reporting of your compliance status and your compliance capabilities. So once again, I mean, organizations should be committed to this. It's not a joke. It's not something you play with. It's not something you muck around with. It's a big deal. It's a big deal. And there's no smart, sensible organization that should not be worried about its own compliance status and its own compliance capabilities. And everybody should have a clear framework, guideline, clear steps in terms of how they can improve it. So thank you very much, everybody. I've been speaking for about, I started speaking at around 2:15. I've spoken for about an hour, and I think I've said all I have to say. These are all the webinars we're looking to do. We did corporate social responsibility, we did oil and asset management, and now we've just done compliance. Next month, we're going to do something specifically on corporate governance using an ISO standard, and it goes on and on. I'm committed to doing 1 full year of webinars. I'm committed to 1 straight year of webinars. I've only done a fourth of it, a quarter of it as of today. We have about 9 more to go, and I'm sure this has been value adding to you and to everybody that is represented here. For you that you're here, we'll share a link to our compliance exam. We'll allow you do it, and hopefully you will pass it. You will get this foundation certificate tied to compliance management. And yeah, you can contact us at any time relative to this. We're always happy to hear from you. Thank you very much. I'm happy to take any questions. If you have any questions, you can either speak or you can put it in the chat room as we get ready to bring this to a beautiful close. Okay? Questions, thoughts, ideas, opinion, whatever, as we get ready to bring this to a beautiful close. Okay?
Well, good afternoon.
Okay, go ahead, please.
Yeah, my name is Richard from Ghana.
Hello, Richard. How are you doing?
Specifically. I'm fine. Hope you are also doing well.
Good.
Yeah, so first of all, I want to thank you for the opportunity to inform us, and then also to remind us of the essentialness of our roles to organization success, and then also organization's business continuity. For me, what the key points that I would want to look at is the compliance people being on top of our role by providing a better framework where we have outlined all the governance issues, all the risk-related issues, and then continuously reporting them for management to, continually to change them. So for me, I am very grateful for this opportunity. I also want to find out if we are going to share the slides.
Oh, yes.
And,
Oh, yes, we'll do that. Thank you very much, Richard. We'll put this whole recording on YouTube. We'll share the link. We'll share the slides with you since you're registered for this. And for you that actually attended, we'll also share the link where you take your Compliance Foundation exam as it is, and accredited certificate to that effect. We'll do all that. So thank you. Thank you very much, Richard. I'm happy with the things you have said. And I'm glad that you've gotten value from this 1 hour of your time. Thank you. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right. Any other person? Any thoughts? Any opinion as we bring this to a beautiful close? Okay. Any other person? Any thoughts? So once again, you can always reach us. Our email is known, and we also will send you an email that you've been able to attend this particular session. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you very much for your time.